Okay. Today we're going to break down business basics in a way that everyone can understand. And then I'll do a quick...
So should I start here? Not welcome, I do.
This is me.
So this is you?
You're going to start kind of like... I will do a transition. You'll know when the mic is yours.
So do I start here?
Yep.
And
Okay.
we're live, but no one's watching yet. No one's hopped on. I'm about to, though, and like it up.
So Brian, this is where got me. Welcome everyone. Al.
Oh.
We have an amazing business consultant. We're gonna go with it.
No. Well, I mean, you can. Sure. Yeah, you do it. Al's a guest. But let me do a quick intro. Guys, hey, welcome to Beer 30. Thank you so much. We got a guest promoter here. His name is Al. He's going to run part of his show here. So, without further ado, let me pass the mic to Al.
Thank you very much, Brian, for that gracious introduction. I'm Al, as Brian eloquently introduced me.
Straight from the Bronx.
Straight from the Bronx. So Brian, I want to take this opportunity. You're the business expert. Like
That's this guy.
Everything has like the hands-on side and has the business side. So
yeah,
I'm a big wrestling fan, right? A wrestling geek. You know how in wrestling performers often start in small indie shows, and before making it to WWE, the big stage. Would you say is that similar to how a business should start?
All right, so I love where you went with this, Al. Should start. Okay. I'm going to build this in holistically. I think a lot of pro wrestlers don't understand that they are a business. And instead, what they work on is the passion and love of the industry and maybe even the physical talent, and that's necessary. That is part of the brand and package, right?
Okay.
But inherently in what I just kind of zoomed in on, you can also see the weaknesses, right?
Yes.
The weaknesses is there was some more outside of that needed to be considered. What does your money management look like? Okay, do you really understand branding? Okay. Now, some of this I think you'll pick up organically just in the industry, talking to the guys to the left and right of you in the locker room, right? But it's a science, and they might not know what they're doing, right? So, yeah, you might be learning a little bit, but you might not be learning as much as you can. Okay, and then the big part here, we actually just had a fun conversation at lunch about this, is that I think so much of wrestling it's the image. You're selling the image and the idea and the story, okay? And so much of that has nothing to do with the ring. Okay, I don't know what if I had to put a percentage, maybe 40% is like outside of the ring, and then even inside the ring, some of that is like right before the match, or some of that is how do you cheat and sell it so you look evil because you're a heel,
The storytelling.
Yeah, so 40% of it I think is the storytelling. Now, why is this so important? In business, this you're your brand, and if you don't understand how to market yourself and how to present your story in a sellable and consumable way, you're going to struggle to hit it big. And if you look, now this is actually one of the things I love about the wrestling industry, is you can see people who really just hit it big. Maybe they weren't the most athletic, maybe they weren't the best looking or whatever, but you know what? Was it the Fiend and the Wyatts? They kind of nail this, right? Just like, man, they have a good idea and they sell you on the story, so that's the cool part of the business. Now, let me take this moment, since you asked a great question. What are some things that people should do if you're a wrestler? Accept the responsibility that you are the business. You happen to be the product too, the wrestling. Accept the branding, and there are a lot of supports. This is one of the things the WWE does really well, is they come up with your gimmick and your story together. And if they think it sucks, they don't stamp you, But understand that it's holistically, no, that's literally going to define your success. Doesn't matter how many flips you can do off the top rope, okay, if you can't tell a story with it, right? And then the second part is really the money management side, is understanding, and it's probably gotten to a point now over the years where it literally is maybe more of a job, but understanding that if you're not smart with your money, if you don't understand the cost to travel, Nate said something. How are you reducing your costs and how are you making it make sense? Okay, well then you're gonna work for 5 years, blow your knee out for the fifth time, or actually the neck injuries is a big one, right? And be like, oh man, I'm gonna have to retire, and then you're gonna be left with nothing, because you should have been doing. We all fall prey to that. So this isn't a bash on anybody that does that in the wrestling capacity, but it's like there's more going on than just bouncing off ropes and clotheslining people.
Wow, that was really good, Brian. Thank you for that. I happen to be a big comic geek.
What?
And here's a good example.
I'm putting you on the spot. Marvel, DC, let's go. Pick one.
I would say Marvel, but I would say the greatest comic book character is Batman. I hope we're not fighting words.
So it's Marvel as an industry, Batman as a character. Good answer.
As the storyteller. Bringing up Batman, right? So heroes like Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne run massive companies. They're both billionaires. While that's fiction, what are the real foundations someone needs to build before starting any business, Brian?
Oh, that is a phenomenal question. All right.
I mean, they both had rich parents. That's definitely helpful.
So
by the way,
they're trust fund babies.
So what you're talking about is funding, and funding is probably step number 3. But let me. Here is the most beautiful. I'm sure I'm stealing this directly from some wise guru way before me. But what you do is to start a business. You have a perceived observation of a need or something missing in a marketplace. Okay? Through that perception of there's a problem that needs to be solved, something's missing, okay? You have an idea of how to either, if it's a product, okay, consumable, cool, or if it's a service. I fix this problem, okay? Perceived need or vacuum. That's super important because what happens a lot is we have like these little, like almost like toilet moments where like, oh, that would be cute, right? A good idea. But we don't really put it through enough testing and enough thought exercise to really understand, is it good? Okay? Is it needed? Is it solved another way? Okay? I don't know. It could be a beer. All right, well, what about a beer that tastes like da-da-da-da-da? And it's like, okay, are you the first guy to think of that flavor? No, yes. Actually, here's a big one. Like the flavored ciders are coming back, or not just ciders, but like the seltzers. Flavored seltzers are like, what's it? White Claw. All right? It's like, dude, you think you're the first people to figure out seltzer in a flavor? Like, you're trying to tell me in the Roaring 20s they didn't have flavored seltzer water? Okay, so now what's the difference? Is it a market shift? Is it you have a better way to do it? Okay, and what I would say is it's a little bit of all of that with respects to White Claw. Okay, what they saw was, hey man, all this stuff. I remember Zima. That was like probably out of style by the time you came along. But like Zima, I was like 20, 21, and Zima was just a seltzer with a little bit of a mint flavor to it. And it didn't stay around long, okay? So what they probably saw was that people stopped doing flavored seltzer, alcoholic flavored seltzer, to an excess, creating an opportunity, right? But really what they did better than so many of the people before them is they marketed it well. They got great exposure. They put it everywhere. They literally strategically went after like people who don't like beer. Like, in general, females, hey man, here's a little spritzer, a flavored spritzer. Okay. And literally the hype of just like, oh, get claws. They came in at a pretty cheap price because at the end of the day, it's seltzer water, vodka, and some flavoring, which allows them to keep the cost down. Right. All right. So back to your original question. Like, what does it take to make a business? Okay. It takes an idea, but that idea has to be purposeful and directional, whereas it solves a problem or it fills a need. Okay. The stronger that need, the better opportunity you have. And then the better that your solution does what it's supposed to do, fills that hole or solves that need, the more inherent success you're going to be capable of. Now, the last trick, you still have to have a way to market your product. And marketing really means just entering a marketplace, okay? So I had this idea of this beer, I want to sell it. To who and how? And really, how do they know? How do I get them in touch with me? How do I say, hey, Al, I got this delicious beer. Do you want one? Yes, I would like one, Brian. Great. Now we can do business, okay? If you never know I have this beer, chance of you buying it from me is zero. Okay, so I've got this great thing, but then I have to have a
out of
plan.
sight, out of mind.
Yep, I have to have a vision of how do I get it out there, and I have to execute on that vision. I think, Nate, you asked me, you were like, hey, what are like one of the pitfalls? And one of the biggest pitfalls is from a top level, we don't have a marketing vision, a plan. I'm going to call it a marketing plan. And then here's the really pitfall is we don't execute it. So you've got this great idea. And now you've been at this for 2 years, and it's like, oh, okay, how do you get customers? And you're like, oh, well, I've got a great contractor friend of mine, and he's really working hard on his business. But he basically, when he runs out of work, he goes to Facebook groups, and he starts scrambling for work. And it's like, oh, okay, well, if you had 8 jobs lined up, do you think you could hire a team? Well, yeah. Well, you're never going to have 8 jobs lined up unless you try and line up 8 jobs. Like, what is your plan? What is your plan to sell your product? And right now, his plan is completely reactionary. Oh, shoot, I don't have anything to do next week. I better start looking first, So I think that's like the most common mistake is there's no good vision of how to enter the market, whatever that could be. It could be advertising, and I usually recommend start with one lane, get good at that. Once you have that, whizzing and working and kind of automated, running itself, then you work on a second way. So what am I speaking when I say that? Like the most common is like you have inbound versus outbound. Outbound would be a salesperson who goes out into the local community and he's like talking to you. Hey man, do you want to buy my product? Inbound would be you're interested in my product. You call into my company. Those channels look differently. So focus on one, get it real sharp, get it working. And then once you can kind of step away, work on the second, work on the third, work on the fourth. Okay?
Brian, thank you so much. So sticking within that realm of comics, right? So let's bring up where you can purchase a comic, which is a comic book shop. They've been struggling lately, but some are thriving. What makes the difference between a comic book business that survives and one that falls?
That's a good question.
I think you hate me. I think you secretly hate me. All right, so if Al doesn't know, or if you guys don't know, I do own a comic book store. I am part owner of the Portal Comics and Gaming, shout out, here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So you can find them at www.theportalcomicsandgaming.com. All right, so here's what makes the industry so hard. And we are in it, me and 3 high school friends, and we are in it because we're nerds, because we love the industry. So it's literally a passion of love.
Very cool.
Now, interestingly enough, but there's a lesson to be learned here. Anytime you have people who are passionate, let's call them hobbyists. The closer you get to a hobby, the harder the business part is going to get. Because you have people who are motivated by something other than money, passion. Okay? So how does that play out in the comic book industry? What you have is you have literally hobbyist enthusiasts open up a shop for 1 or 2 years, run a very bad shop. But during running that very bad shop, this is actually a real story. There's about an hour north of us, Guy opened up a store, basically says he has a store. It really is his basement. He's running a game shop out of his basement, and he's selling product to his friends at cost. Now, that's great as a hobbyist. You're getting 30% off your product. It's fantastic. And me too. So as a hobbyist, as a collector, great. But as an industry, you're taking sales away from the guy down the street that was really trying to feed his family. Because notice I said at cost, which means you're not making any profit. You're selling out of your basement. It's not a store. Okay? So each person that comes and buys from you is actually hurting the industry as a whole. Now, in 2 or 3 years, you're going to be out of business. But during those 2 or 3 years, you may have taken enough profit away from my shop that I had to close. Okay? Wow. So now here's the second layer, specifically in the comic industry, is they can get the product cheaper everywhere else, not just somewhere, but everywhere else. Amazon will always beat your price. So what I would recommend, and what we've tried to do, we've been in business for 20 years, over 20 years, is create an experience. Okay? So when you come to my store, Al, I hope you make it to my store. It's phenomenal. And you're going to be like, wow, this is great. And what do you see? You see game space. You see tables. You see terrain for mini gaming. You see people playing at the tables. If you went to an Amazon warehouse, you wouldn't see any of that, right? So that means what I have, you can only find with me, which is the community, which is the experience. I would find ways to pay for the space, pay for the community. It doesn't have to be a lot. It could be $5 a month. And don't necessarily expect to make it. Don't do it through discounting. Discounting is the wrong way to go because you'll never keep up with, they call it keeping up with the Joneses, but you'll never keep up with Amazon when it comes to how cheap can you get your prices. So when you're talking to that person that cares, is making the decision off price, they can always go somewhere else. And if you're trying to compete with them, you're making such a little bit of margin that it's not worth it.
Wow. So now let's move on to something that's also kind of geeky and similar to comics. I'm a big wrestling guy. So when wrestlers rebrand themselves, there's been so many, like Undertaker was Mean Mark, and the great Stone Cold was part of the Hollywood Blondes with Pillman. But it often leads to bigger success. How do you know when a business needs to pivot or completely change direction?
Wow. You did that to me, Al. I can't. You went from Hollywood Hogan, doing a face to heel flip to, hey, business. Okay. All right. So the cool thing is it's the same flow. It's life, right? So here you are, you're young Stone Cold. What was his name?
He was with the
Stunning Steve Austin.
Stunning Steve Austin. Okay.
Pillman.
Before he went to Stone Cold, right? So he's out there. He's trying some things.
I think he was the ringmaster as well.
And I just recently I heard some of the Rock's early story too.
Flex Kavana.
Yeah. So he's out there, and you're listening, and really what you're doing. But this is super important in business. How fast can you start getting real feedback from your customers? Okay, real feedback. So you have an idea. I think people will buy this. Well, how do you test if your idea is right? Well, you try and sell it, and then people either do buy it or they don't. If you're quantifying that data, you can see, did I guess right? Did I underguess or did I overguess? Okay? But it's basically just feedback. And that's what those wrestlers doing. Hey, man, I'm not getting over, the crowd really isn't liking me. But the data and being receptive to it and responsive to it is the key. So go back to your question in business. I'm trying something, and it's not as successful as I want it to be. Now, there's a little bit of an internal check here was your target realistic? But I think unless you're in completely untouched grounds, you can test that through looking at what competitors are doing. Okay, unless you're completely into a novel, scenario, you can look at benchmarks, and if you're way below the industry average, the work needs to happen with you. You need to change. Now, super important, common mistake is where people aren't tracking any data at all. This is the biggest thing between a small business and a medium business. Small business owner is they often don't have the tools. They often don't have the team to actually just kind of like be administratively tight.
Okay.
And they don't track data. And if you don't track data, what it really boils down to, and I know you have somebody you can think of in your circle that's like this. If you got a good gut, if you got that good street intuition, you can still bob and shake a little bit. Because you're making moves, you have data, it's just I can't write it out for you. But people who can't do that fail.
Understood.
Now, how do you take the person out of it? Is you create the system of real data that's showing the underlying feedback. Units sold, cost per bottle, all that, right? The clearer you can get the data, the more you can tell yourself if you need to pivot. Okay, so that would be your first indicator. And let's say you're below your that would be, okay, it's time to do something. Now, that could be retargeting, like branding of the existing product, or it could be actually shift of the product. Okay, maybe the product, like I said, we don't know. We had an idea. Okay, I love making fun of IPAs. Okay, so the Indian Pale Ale, it was literally created. They took a great beer, a nice English brown ale, okay, and they just added some more alcohol to it, so it wouldn't spoil as it went around the Horn of Africa on the way to India. They literally took good beer and they made it different so it wouldn't spoil.
Wow.
And now Americans are like, I want an Indian Pale Ale. I'm like, dude, you literally want ruined ale. Like, it's crazy. But there's an example of how you change the product, and maybe it takes off. And that's a big core component of any business. And the leading edge, like the big companies, Google, you would call it research and development, okay? But you always want an R&D department that's testing new things. But I want you to keep your mind open when I say testing new things. It could be testing a new marketing headline, okay?
Okay.
And often what we do from a marketing standpoint is called A/B testing. It's like you come up with your best one-liner, I come up with my best one-liner, and we both send out the same thing. The only thing different is our one-liners. And if, Al, you get 60% return and I get 40%, guess whose was better? Yours. And that becomes the new norm. And we run with that.
Interesting.
Okay, so it's always so the more you can get into that R&D, testing new things, not every company has the resources to be able to do that well. But that's where you're going to discover the things that are going to work, things that are going to propel you to the next level.
Right, that's awesome. We were talking about, you were recently at the Javits in a comic convention, and comic conventions make most of their money in just a few weekends. How should seasonal or event-based businesses manage their finances throughout the year?
Ha! Wow, I don't know. You know this question list, but
these are some good questions.
All right, so it really comes down to
Bringing out the big guns on Brian.
Like budget. Okay, I'll use that example. Say I do one event a year, Super Bowl. Okay, I know how much money I make, and all I need to do is take the time to create a budget. If I create a budget, even if it's not perfect, I will be pretty darn close to not ruining my life and my business. Okay. However, I want to add this. If you have the capacity, we'll use that football, Super Bowl as kind of an anchor point. So I have a stadium and I can have events in it. Well, if I can have 18 games or maybe more, that's going to be way better than just having one Super Bowl. So the key here is if you do events, well, why are you only doing one? And if you have this, say you have a team and they plan this event, and it takes them all year, that's fine. Okay, well, now I know what it takes to run a Super Bowl. I can copy that plan, which is called scalability, and I can do it a second and a third and a fourth time. Maybe I run the Pro Bowl too. Maybe I run the college bowl scene, okay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I figured out how to run a great football, sports event. Okay. Why stop at one? Why, you know what it takes to do one. Okay, if you can repeat that, and that's literally what owning a business is, by the way. Because anybody can get lucky once. Anybody can sell one beer. Okay, but how do you systematically create a process and a flow and a procedure? Often, when you do it enough times, it becomes that standardized operating procedure, so that you can do it with a predictive element.
Wow, thank you, Brian.
I don't even know if I answered the question.
So since we're to stay on the topic of comics and wrestling, both wrestling and comics have a loyal fan base to them. How can new businesses build that kind of customer loyalty totally from scratch, Brian?
Okay, this is a great question. So early on, there's nothing at all that is going to matter more long term. It's not short term, long term, than building up a brand, and brand inclusive in that idea is loyalty, brand loyalty. Okay, the way you do that is you repeatedly over time honor your contract and promise to your customer. Okay, if it's entertainment, I give you a great show. Okay, if it's a comic book store, I give you a safe, welcoming environment to find other people that are interested in playing your game. Okay. So consistently over time. Now, here are some things that you can do to make it stronger or accelerate the pace. Okay. Think about how literally the journey of how somebody becomes more loyal, sees the value of their journey, sees the value of what you're offering. The more you can make that very transparent and almost take credit for that journey and push them down that journey, the faster there will be a loyal customer for life. Once again, repeatable process, right? You want to be able to do that for as many people that touch your, business as possible. I think another thing that's really important here is dedicated and specific intent. Okay, and I've seen this a lot in retail. You can tell me of a great retail experience, but you can also tell me of a bad one. The great one looked like this. You came to the lease line, which is where that thing, you walked in and somebody said, "Hi, welcome. How are you? I'm Brian. What's your name?" And you're like, "Al." "Hey, Al, man, welcome. Welcome to Victoria's Secrets. Are you shopping for yourself? No judgment. Or are you shopping for your wife?" And you were like, "Hopefully my wife." "Great, man. Hey, do you want to look, browse, or can I walk with you?" I gave you an opportunity, an option. If you're like, "No, I'm just browsing." "Cool, man. When you're ready, call me on over and I'll come over and help you out." Perfect. Great experience. I treated you like a human. You know who I am. I set good expectations. I'm giving you your space because most of the time they want to test you. They want to see if you leave them alone. So they're like, "No, I'm just browsing," right? It's really just a test, but they want to see if you'll honor it. "Cool, man. When you're ready, just wave me over." All right? Now, the second test will be I'll wave you over and see if you come over, right? Now, the opposite version, the bad experience is you walked in the front door, the person in the back is sitting there playing on their phone. Where's my prop? Doesn't even look up, doesn't say hello, doesn't even know you're there. Now you're kind of lost. You're like looking around. I don't know, what's the flow of the store? What's on that side? What's on this side? I feel weird. I'll use the Victorias. I feel weird anyway. Like, I don't know. Like I don't know what any of this stuff is. I'm just trying to make my girl smile for Valentine's Day, right? Maybe a little bit for me. Okay. So it's like, so we know what the difference is. And intent. It's like, no. You take them on the journey. You envision this amazing journey and you do it. It's not by accident.
That's great, Brian. Thank you for that. So once again, we're gonna stay on the topic of wrestling and comic because I'm fascinated with that realm. But you see a lot of wrestlers and a lot of comic creators starting Patreon accounts and merchandise lines. What should people consider before adding new revenue streams, Brian?
Well, let me first say adding new revenue streams is very, very good. But before you get there, because that's your question, you should make sure your existing revenue streams make sense and are kind of optimized. And if I just had to say general, just what's a general starting point? Are they specifically designed with profit engineering and profit targets in mind? Okay. Now, if you're going to add some different profit and revenue streams, the same principles apply. So I'm going to sell a t-shirt. Well, should you sell it at $15 or should you sell it at $25 or should you sell it at $40? I don't know if you guys have been to any concert lately, but now they're like pretty much 35 is the going rate, but they know what they're doing. They're like, no, the only place you're going to get my concert shirt is here at this concert. You don't care, even though 25 or 20 is probably a good price, you'll pay 35. You'll pay a premium rate. For a while, my wife was doing shirts, Filipino shirts, that kind of stuff. And because I wouldn't let her include shipping, we sold them at $35. Now, she didn't sell as many as maybe she wanted to, but what she did do was make money on each one she sent. Versus if she would have priced them at $20, she would have lost money. And if you think that through, if you're losing money on each shirt, the more shirts you sell, the closer you are to bankruptcy. Okay? There is one scenario where that is acceptable. It's if it's part of a bigger marketing vision.
It's a loss leader?
Correct. It's what they call a loss leader, which is somebody that's like, I want to get you excited. Here's the freebie. Here's the freebie. Here's the freebie. So it's not free. It costs me money. Okay, but I give it to you so that you'll say, hey, Brian, let me see this is exciting. Now you're talking to me. What else do you have? Okay, here's another interesting thing. When we talked I don't know if it was 2 questions back. I feel it was 2 questions back. Loyalty, that loyalty, okay? You will sell more to a loyal customer than you ever will to a new customer. And I don't mean it's the idea is they literally care about you. They like your brand. You come out with a new book, they buy it. The new person that doesn't, no. So you want to spend way more of your time down here cultivating great products and great things because these people will keep buying it.
Thanks, Brian. So we were talking earlier about we nearly got into a little bit of an altercation here. Because I was saying, so I now know that you love Superman, and let's face it, Superman is the OG. When I think of the superhero, I think of Superman. But in comics, even Superman has weaknesses. So in regards to businesses, what are some blind spots that new business owners need to watch out for?
Ooh, this is so good. These questions are so good. All right, let me start here. Whatever you're not doing in your business is what's holding you back. I always envision, follow me on this journey. I envision a car. Every part of the car needs to run. You buy a new car. Every part's important. Every part. Now, there are a couple pieces that aren't super, whatever, the auto window stops working. The car can still drive, but your experience is still less. And the thing isn't working the way it's supposed to. So there's better and worse, but everything's important. And here's what happens usually if you think about like just that, the mom and pop store or the side hustle, is you do the parts of business that you like. And you ignore the whole part. Now, if you could just be honest, and let's say the 3 of us, if we could be honest about
great comparison,
what the machine looks like, we could then divvy up. Okay, Al, you're in charge of this, this, and this. I'm in charge of this, this, and this. Nate, you're in charge of this, this, and this. Okay, and maybe each one of us has one thing we don't like, but it's like, hey man, put on your big boy pants. It's not about what you like. It's like, can we get the machine to work? And I guarantee you, if you guys have ever been part of a team that's kicking ass, okay, it's contagious. It's like sports. It's winning. You're part of a team that's killing it and growing, and the money's getting bigger, and you got another raise. You will find
off of each other,
and you will love it. You'll be like, whoa. Whoa, I still don't like the mechanics of that, but I'll keep doing it. Why? Because I see how it works. It's like conditioning in football. Nobody likes running the laps, but then when you're in the game and you're not winded, you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that work. So it's the things you're not doing that are hold you back. Now, what are some common ones? Okay, I'll tell you, the biggest one that I continually see is a lack of workflow planning. Okay, and a real good way to think that through is we tend to be okay at doing the absolutely immediate emergency things that need to get done. Okay, but what we're really bad at is how am I going to improve my business this week? And when I'm coaching and consulting, often what I'll do is I'll say something like, hey, if we fixed or improved one thing this week, yeah, you with me? What would that look like? And they tell me, what if we did that for a year straight? How many things would we fix or improve? And they're like, 52? Like, what do you think your business would look like if you improved 52 different things? You're like, holy crap, you're right. Yeah, so how fast can we get to work and start fixing one thing? And we've all been there. I'll start my diet next week. But in business, this is how I take it personally. There's more on the line because, you know what? It could be your family. It could be your employees' families. It could be your community. Like, hey, man, do you want to step up and do you want to be a leader? And do you want to be a pathfinder and blaze a path for others to follow where that they can have prosperity and you can build a community together and you can matter? Okay, I think that's been lost in the white noise of our current society, and you know, it started with like that stamping and manufacturing lines, you know, but it's gotten extremely the white noise has just been amplified through social media. So I think we've lost a lot of that purpose, drive, meaning, you know, camaraderie, like real, you know, like family in the sense that I choose to be your brother, you know, or sister. You know, not just, I was birthed in the same house and now I don't talk to you anymore because we got in an argument when I was 14.
That's a great comparison.
So, yeah. So I would say workflow is the number one. And overall, it's always the things you're not doing that are holding you back.
Wow, Brian, thanks. I almost feel like I'm getting ready to start a business now. So now let's continue on using wrestling and comics to.
It's been working well. I don't see why.
So I got one last question for you, Brian. The wrestling industry has changed drastically with social media and streaming, and we all kind of know too much. But how can small businesses stay ahead of the industry and the curve? You know, changing rather than just reacting to them, Brian.
I hope somebody didn't just die upstairs. That is an amazing question.
And great beer, by the way.
Yes. Thank you all for coming to Beer 30. Hopefully, if you had some specific questions, we're doing a little bit more linear today, but we'll try and answer them in the comments. I know Nate's been looking every now and again. But either way, thank you guys for coming to Beer 30. So let me do this justice. There's something that we this is kind of like a nuance that my partner and I have borrowed from people we work with and care about, called market dominating position. Okay? And here's a real simple way. How are you different than other people that are doing what you're doing? Okay? How are you different? Not how are you the same? How are you different? But the reason that's so important is you could see in your question, it was like, oh, what happens if this changes or that changes or this changes? The answer would kind of be the same. Hey, how are you still going to be different? But I will also say that if you are already different and the market shifts and moves, you're way more resilient. Okay? Unless that whole thing went away, you're still way more resilient because people knew why they were picking you. So the answer would be the same, is how am I unique? How am I different? If that really changes and goes away, go on that journey, refine it. Okay, but more often I find people don't define that well. One of the best ones that comes to mind is Domino's Pizza. This is their market dominating position when I was growing up. Hot pizza in 30 minutes or less. Okay? Now, their target market at the time was starving, grumbling, hungry college kids. I didn't say my pizza tasted good. I didn't say delicious. I didn't say it was the best. I didn't say Papa John's quality ingredients. Didn't care about any of that. I said it was hot. I said you would get it in 30 minutes or less. They literally took over the whole industry because they got it there faster than everybody else.
They're even in the Ninja Turtles movie, the first film,
Yep.
Domino's.
Fast food. That was their market dominating position. Hey, man, some people are going to like our pizza. Some people are going to like Pizza Hut. But wait a minute. What if we get it there faster?
Genius.
Yeah. So I would say really work on that. Lean into it. If the market does shift, redefine what your difference is.
Brian, thank you so much for having me.
Best guest host ever, man.
Thank you. I hope some of my questions are questions that the viewers may have. Obviously, if they have their own, they should reach out to you, via message. But thank you.
This has been a joy, man. Here.
Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Let's cheers to that.
To Beer 30. Nate, thanks for being in the background. And we'll see you again. Thanks for everybody who came along on the journey. We good?
Hold up. Almost. Come on. I thought it let me end it, and then it didn't. Time to flip it back over.
All right, you'll have to edit this out. Is everybody upstairs safe?